It's Star Wars night at Bridgestone Arena, and the Predators will either beat or not beat the Tampa Bay Lightning. There is no try. Plus, trust our senses. What do we feel about the first 25 games of the Nashville Predators season? We'll look at the biggest surprises and storylines from the first part of the year on the Locked On Predators podcast.
Your Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making the Locked On Predators podcast your first listen of the day every single day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I want to start out with a special hello to our loyal Locked On Pred heads out there, the everydayers who tune into every single show. We love you guys. We appreciate the support you give us week in, week out. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio, and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at the Hockey News.
Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get a $150 bonus bet with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. We are more than a quarter of the way through the 2023-24 NHL season. And it is time to look back at the Nashville Predators. We will look at the biggest storylines from the first 25 games of the season, the biggest surprises, both good and bad, and maybe the biggest difference between this team and the one we saw in 2022 and 23. All that coming up today on the Locked On Predators podcast. But first, Dan, Nashville Predators versus Tampa Bay Lightning tonight at Bridgestone Arena. It is Star Wars night. So feel the force, Ann.
I love it so much.
Do you feel the force?
I mean, I guess. Yeah, it's okay. No, actually, I love Star Wars night. I don't know if I told you this at our wedding. My husband's a huge Star Wars fan. So the bride and groom on our wedding cake was Han Solo and Princess Leia. He had one job, y'all. That's what he did with it. So big Star Wars fan. So it'll be fun. I think it'll be really fun. The game, however, is going to be really interesting. I was really shocked when I looked up Tampa Bay's record. They are 12-10-5, which really surprised me because in my mind, Tampa Bay is not a 12-10-5 team. They've been through some things. They have been through some things, but they've come out of it kind of in the last couple of games with some wins. So tonight's going to be a test for the Nashville Predators.
Here's a fun thing about the Tampa Bay Lightning. The worst defensive team in the NHL this year in terms of goals allowed, San Jose Sharks. The second worst team in the NHL defensively in terms of goals allowed, the Tampa Bay Lightning.
So surprising.
94 goals allowed as a team this year, more than any other team besides the San Jose Sharks. That's not something you're kind of used to hearing from the Tampa Bay Lightning. Of course, the good news for them is they are also tied for third in the entire NHL in terms of scoring. So that's probably they still have a positive record there.
Yeah, and Andrei Vasilevskiy missed 20 games. He missed the first 20 games of the season. He was out with back surgery, which, you know what? Here you go, coming back from back surgery and jumping back into being a professional athlete. Andrei Vasilevskiy, that's pretty impressive. He returned November 24th, and he's been 3-3 in his 6 games. So I think having Vasilevskiy back is definitely going to kind of move them up that defensive list. But
they're not going to stay there for long.
No, they're not going to stay there. It's just been a really interesting season, I think, for the Tampa Bay Lightning. They're maybe not exactly the same team that we're used to seeing and thinking of when we think of the Lightning.
Yeah, Nikita Kucherov is the NHL's leading scorer right now, so they still have that going for them. But and you look, and Brayden Point is hot, Steven Stamkos is hot, Victor Hedman's hot, even some of the depth guys like Brandon Hagel are hot.
Yeah,
but and I know this stat is not everything, people. We've talked about it many times, but Stamkos is minus 14 this year.
Yeah.
Mikhail Sergachev, like one of their best defenders, is minus 14 this year. And then, Nick Paul is minus 15, who is, one of their key bottom six players, who's out there for a lot of defensive situations. So, it's one of those things where it's like they seem to be out there for more goals against than they are goals for, and a lot of it. So the two-way game doesn't seem like it's quite there for the Lightning this season.
Yeah, I will say offensively, you look at somebody like Nikita Kucherov, like you said, he's the leading scorer in the NHL. He also just recently broke a franchise record for the Lightning for point streak. He has a 12-game point streak where in 12 games, this guy has 15 assists. Not as many, not as many goals, but Nikita Kucherov is just absolutely cooking. Brayden Point, like you mentioned, also another player who is really cooking well. Do want to point out a little sub-storyline coming into the game tonight. Tonight is the first time former Predator Tanner Jeannot will be back at Bridgestone Arena. And little bit of trivia, it's also his 200th NHL game. So it's just kind of cool that he'll celebrate or mark kind of that NHL career milestone back where it all began here at Bridgestone Arena. So Tanner Jeannot back. He had a goal in last night's win over the Pittsburgh Penguins, which if we weren't playing the Tampa Bay Lightning today would have delighted me much more. But yeah, Tanner Jeannot's coming back, y'all. Tanner's back, y'all.
Yeah.
Love it.
Do we have our three just people with draft pick t-shirts come and cheer in the press box or something like that?
Seriously.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. It's going to be fun to see Tanner Jeannot come back. Also, Austin Watson.
Yep, he's having a good season.
Although he has kind of perennially been a healthy scratch, but still. Also, Philippe Myers on the team, man.
Who could have forgotten? How could I have not led with that one?
Yeah, we are going to see a Philippe Myers tribute video. that is just the tweet of him being in the Ryan Ellis trade, and
that's it.
And then that's it. The music just abruptly shuts off and cuts to a confused-looking Phil Myers in the press box.
He's like, was I here? I didn't know.
Yeah,
it'll be great. I'm excited to see Tanner Jeannot back. Here is my question for you. If you are one of his teammates, which Nashville Predator would be like, yeah, okay, I'll drop the gloves with Jeannot? Would Michael McCarron dare?
I think back to last year in the playoffs, maybe the best fight of the Stanley Cup playoffs was Tanner Jeannot versus Luke Schenn.
Crazy fight.
Really good fight. Lasted for about a minute. Both guys got some good punches in. It's not every day Tanner Jeannot gets in a fight and looks evenly matched. There's very select few, but Luke Schenn was one of those guys. Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for entertainment value, it seems like that's
the matchup you would want.
Yeah,
that was a crazy good fight. And look, I'm not an advocate necessarily of fighting in hockey, but if you are somebody who is like, can they really ever get a good fight going on ice skates? These two, it was crazy good fight, but let's not.
I don't know. I would like to see it.
Okay.
I think it'd be fun.
We'll see.
Still to come. We are now 25 games into the NHL season. Tonight will be the 26th. Let's look back at the first 25. Who are some of the biggest surprises on the Preds right now? What are some of the biggest storylines to watch in the second half of the year? And what are some key differences between this year and last year? We'll talk about that coming up in just 1 second. But first, I want to mention today's episode is brought to you by Jace Medical. Folks, we have a lot of fun here talking sports, but let's be honest, sometimes sports is a escape from the crazy reality of real life. And real life is something that we need to prepare for. According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. It's the holiday season. Maybe you're traveling somewhere to celebrate with family. The last thing you want to do is be unprepared to take care of yourself or a loved one if you fall ill. Jace Medical can give you peace of mind before you ever hop on a flight. The Jace case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, respiratory infection, sinusitis, skin infections, and many more. This stuff can happen to any of us. So visit jacemedical.com. Complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to prepare than today. Go to jacemedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. All right, and we are 25 games into the NHL's regular season. Nashville Predators hanging in there with a respectable 13-12 record, 8-2 in their last 10 games. That's something I think all of us will be happy to see.
Yeah.
So we thought it'd be a good time to kind of reflect and look back at the first 25 games so far. Who are some of the best players this year? Who's a player who's maybe disappointment? Maybe what are some of the biggest storylines to watch in the second half of the year? Stuff like that. So, yeah, Ann and I are going to do a little reflecting period.
Yeah, it's going to be good. We're going to tell you what we liked. And I do think it's really interesting to kind of say what's going to happen from this point on. 25 games in, you kind of are starting to see, like I said, you can see the skeleton of what Andrew Brunette's tenure is going to look like. So what's it going to look like as it gets more fleshed out?
Yeah. Let's start with an easy one, and let's start with best game from the first 25 games.
Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah, for me, and I know this may seem like recency bias, but I truly believe that this was the best game. I think the Nashville Predators game against the New York Rangers was their best game of the season, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think what preceded it speaks to sort of the maturity in the locker room, because this was the game that they played immediately after laying an absolute egg against the Minnesota Wild. So for me, I think it really speaks to, this is a team that's able to kind of regroup and rebound quickly. They're able to like, okay, hey, we've got to learn from that. What do we need to take away from it and close the chapter? And I think that comes with some of the veteran presence on the team. You know, you've got Ryan O'Reilly, you've got Philip Forsberg, Roman Josi, Gus Nyquist, who have all been through this, where you just lay an egg and now what are you going to do? So I think that showed some maturity in the locker room, but I also think that was maybe our best opportunity to see the style of play and how effective it's going to be against top teams as the Predators get better and better as they go. Also want to point out, this was a game the Nashville Predators looked very, very good in, and they didn't have Cody Glass or Tommy Novak. So I think it bodes really well for what a healthy Nashville Predators team can do against a team that is playing probably the best in the league in that stretch right there with the New York Rangers. So for me, that was the best game of the season.
I'm surprised you didn't go the one that happened a week and a half before that.
What's that?
It's got to be Nashville Predators versus Colorado Avalanche, right?
You know what? I mean, I think about that, but I also feel like and I'm not trying to be the Colorado Avalanche announcer here, y'all, but I feel like people still chalk that up to puck luck. That's why.
First off, the puck never went off the glass. He shot at the boards.
I know, but I'm just saying, like,
but
I think people will chalk that win up to like, oh, they had the puck luck that night.
Well, but they didn't. There's a difference between saying it did and didn't. And here's the thing about the Nashville Predators. The Nashville Predators are a team that up to that point, and we had talked so much about them playing very, very well and just not getting the results. You know, and it was like against the good teams, it's like, oh, look, they're holding their own, but they just come up short one late, or they blow it right at the end, or they have a bad stretch they can't come from. But look at the positive. The Colorado game was the first time that it just felt like they got rewarded for their play during a game. And how many times did we talk about the Nashville Predators, you know, playing well and then getting in a hole and just feeling like they had to revert to their old habits?
Yes, falling back into their old ways.
The important thing for that Colorado game is they stuck with their game plan, even when they went down one, even when like the lead evaporated. They stuck with their game plan. And they kept pushing, and they kept pushing, and they kept pushing, kept doing the things that they, you know, Andrew Brunette wanted them to do. And they looked so good in that third period that I was ready, you know, before Philip Forsberg scored that tying goal with about 30 seconds left. I was ready to say, like, hey, you know what? They lost this game, but you have to be very proud of the way the Nashville Predators played. And then lo and behold, what happens? Philip Forsberg breaks through, ties it. We're like, all right, we're going to get a point out of this. Yakov Trenin takes a advantage of a bad play by Cale Makar, who I could probably count one time, one time on my hand. How, I guess count on one hand, whatever that saying is. You can do that with how many bad plays Cale Makar's had in his entire career. He took advantage of that, and the Predators got a win. And it was just exciting. It was at a home crowd at Bridgestone Arena. That was probably the loudest it's been all season. To me, that's just, I feel like, the defining game of the first bit of the season so far.
Yeah, kind of a pivot game. Yeah. And Andrew Brunette sort of talked about that. He was very careful to say that Colorado game pre-game. He was very careful to say, like, look, we're not going to say this is a bigger game than any other game. It's not a measuring stick game. But afterward, he was willing to say, we may look back halfway through the season and go, hey, this is the game where we feel like the page turned a little bit as far as what our team does under pressure from behind with a lead and all that kind of thing. So I can see that too. I just feel like so many people chalk that win up to like, oh, that was lucky. Look at how lucky the Predators were.
They can do that and they would be wrong.
Sit there in your wrongness and be wrong, y'all.
Yeah. What about a player surprise, a positive player surprise this year, Ann?
Yeah, for me, and I know this sounds crazy to say it, but Philip Forsberg really has been, for me, the biggest player surprise. Not because I didn't think that he would be good, but because I think I am surprised that this season seems to affirm that the Philip Forsberg of 2021-22 was not the anomaly. That is really the Philip Forsberg that the Nashville Predators have had on their roster. So for me, I think Forsberg is probably the biggest player surprise, not only statistically, but just as you've watched him play. His play has just been better this year. And I think that has to do with line mates. I think it also has to do with playing in a system that 100% plays to his strengths. Not that he's not strong, not that he can't forecheck and all of that kind of thing, but speed and offense. That's Philip Forsberg. He is here for that. So for me, I think Philip Forsberg has been my delighted surprise. What about you? Who's your happy surprise?
I would go with, first off, I agree with you with Forsberg. I would go with Tommy Novak. I know he's been hurt and he's kind of, fallen out of the wayside a little bit, but Tommy Novak was a guy who had a very, very out of nowhere good year last year. And I think a lot of people were thinking it's like, all right, is Tommy Novak a great player after 43 points in 51 games? Or, he had an 18.3 shooting percentage. Is this going to be like Tanner Jeannot, like 2.0? Yes. Or it's like, just a good year and,
a blip.
And then a blip. I think Tommy Novak in the short time that he played this year has been proving that no, this is Tommy Novak.
Yes.
This is kind of more of, last year was maybe closer to the norm of what he can become than what, than maybe just an anomaly. I think, you watch him, he's got such a good, head on his shoulders in terms in terms of hockey sense.
Yes.
He just always knows sort of the right place to be. He can get himself into areas. He's skilled enough that, he can make those stick handling plays. He can make a good shot. He works so well with the other Preds top players on the team, and 12 points in 14 games before he went down with injury. I would anticipate him coming back in the lineup and hitting the ground running again whenever that is. So, yeah, for me, Ann, I think Tommy Novak has been a pleasant surprise because I think there was reasonable doubt, a lot of us, that he was going to be able to be that good again. And then here he is.
Yeah, I would agree with you. He was he was on my short list as well for the exact same reasons. And it's interesting. I look back over the summer, I talked to Aaron Sims, who is the Milwaukee Admirals play-by-play person. Fascinating guy. He's really cool. Mm-hmm. But I asked him, I'm like, Tommy Novak, this is what we saw from Tommy Novak last season in Nashville. What do you think about that? And he said, oh, that's Tommy Novak. Yeah. I mean, just without hesitation, he said, oh, no, that's not an anomaly. That's Tommy Novak. And even then I was like, is it? I mean, like, I hope you're right, Aaron Sims. Ladies and gentlemen, Aaron Sims was right. I stand corrected. Shout out to Aaron Sims, because Tommy Novak is exactly who we saw last season. And I really want to get him back, because I think him being gone affects Sherwood and Evangelista. That line really was chawing along nicely. So I really am with you. Like, let's get him back in the lineup here.
Yeah, I'm with you there. A couple of other things to go on. Let's talk about players who are the biggest, maybe negative surprise this year. Players who thought maybe doing better. Plus, the biggest difference from last season, and a storyline to watch in the second half. We'll get to that coming up on the Locked On Predators podcast.
First, want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers do stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That is $150 if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there is really no better time to get in on the action. This app is safe, it's very easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options you can choose from, including spreads, player props. You can choose over-unders and more. So go and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
All right, Anna, let's talk about a surprising player from a negative standpoint. Who's somebody that you thought maybe would be having a bigger impact this year?
Again, I feel like this is going to get chalked up to recency bias, but I think this goes far beyond like the last week or so. And for me, I'm actually surprised about Tyson Barry's fit in the system this season. This is this is a defenseman who really is known for what he brings offensively to a team. And we saw that last season when he joined the team through the Matthias Ekholm trade. We saw him on the power play. Of course, he was one of the last veterans left standing in that locker room, and he stepped into that role. And you kind of felt like, hey, this is great. We've got another veteran voice in the locker room that's going to be really useful for these young players. And we've got another offensive defenseman. So it's not just Roman Josi who can, score some points from the defensive side of things or create some offensive opportunities, or who can quarterback a power play. And I'm so surprised that Barry seems to have really struggled with a scheme that is very offensively minded. I really felt like he was one of the players under Andrew Brunette who was going to flourish. And we haven't seen that happen with his game. And again, there have been some changes here and there with the blue line, with Shen being injured and players in and out. But this was one I was really surprised with. And then you kind of tack onto it just recently what's going on with, kind of requesting to talk to some other teams. So for me, this has kind of been a bit of a disappointment.
Yeah, Tyson Barry is 100% mine as well. And it's the biggest thing was just the play, because you think of what Andrew Brunette has done with defensemen like Dougie Hamilton, like Aaron Ekblad, helping them to career best seasons. I think everybody's like, oh, Roman Josi's going to be there, but Tyson Barry had 55 points last year in the NHL as a defenseman. I think a lot of people were kind of expecting him to sort of be that big piece of depth scoring from the blue line behind Roman Josi that they haven't had since Ryan Ellis and Matthias Ekholm left, quite frankly. So, I think a lot of people kind of expected this to be tailor-made, for somebody like Barry's skill set. And I'm with you. Like, it just, and it's not just not producing on offense, but it's just, he's not good in transition. And that was, a point of the game in which, okay, well, he's a puck moving defenseman. That should be something, there's some mistakes like, just sort of, the mistakes on the defensive end or losing coverage, like plays you wouldn't expect a veteran to make. And I think that is something that I think a lot of us were like, okay, it's not just that he's not scoring. It's just that he hasn't looked good, or I should say as good as maybe we had hoped for quite some time. Yeah,
he has been a very surprising player that that I feel like maybe has sort of struggled to adjust to what the team is doing. And that's the one that I really thought, hey, this is going to suit Tyson Barry well. And it just hasn't. So it has been very surprising to me. The other thing I will say is just injuries have also had affected some player seasons. I was so excited to see what Cody Glass was going to do.
Yeah.
Let's get him going. This is kind of the time for Cody Glass to settle in. They had kind of indicated he and Gus Nyquist would be together. I don't think that's going to happen even when Glass comes back healthy. So that has been a disappointing situation. Not that Cody Glass has been disappointing, but the situation has been very disappointing.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting one.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think is the biggest difference between this year's team and last year's team?
For me, I think it's an eye test thing. And I feel like when you look back and think back to what last year's team did with some of the same pieces, like Philip Forsberg, like Roman Josi, briefly with Tommy Novak even, I think it just looks faster and more offensive, which I know is the point. And I'm not saying that the Predators are necessarily, they haven't necessarily arrived there yet, but I do think the transition game has been better. I think offensive production has been better. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, just straight up eye test, fan-based feedback, this is a hell of a lot of more fun hockey. There's a hell of a lot more fun hockey to be watching this season.
Yeah. It boils down to me, Anna's possession.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy how much possession can, I think, change what a team does during a game. I mean, it boils down to you just have the puck more.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's going to lead to more offensive chances. That's going to look to your offense being a little bit sharper. Guys like Forsberg are going to have a chance to shine a little bit more. But it also means the other team doesn't have the puck.
Yeah.
And you're not going to have to survive those moments you did last year where it just seems like from the second period on, you're in lockdown mode,
mm-hmm.
And you're just kind of waiting for the other team to, shoot the puck at Saros so that he can trap it or, have them yeet the puck out of the zone or something like that. You're kind of more in charge of your own destiny in the defensive end when you have possession of the puck. And, the numbers support that, but also it's just the eye test. I think the Predators are doing a better job winning puck battles in their own zone. Like, I think there's definitely some moments that doesn't happen, but I think overall they're much better than they were last year. They're doing better at, kind of capitalizing on chances to transition or move the puck out of the zone. So it's not just, try to, send it over along the boards and it just bounces right to the defenseman at the blue line and, boom, like you keep it in the zone.
Right back in. Yeah.
I think possession has certainly, I think, overwritten a lot of the problems that the Nashville Predators still have with this team.
So we've talked about, like, here are some things that we're observing in the first 25 games. I'm curious, what do you think the Predators still need to work on, or what are you looking for them to get better at moving forward? Where do you see them needing kind of the most improvement going forward?
I don't know if it's improvement, but the storyline I'm most interested in watching for the second half of the year is just what happens at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Are the Predators going to be close enough that Barry Trotz feels like, you know what, let's just see what we have this year. Like, we have some young players on the pipeline. Or are they going to look and be like, okay, this is, not exactly where we need to be long-term. So maybe Alex Carrier is on the block or Dante Fabro is on the block. Even somebody like Cody Glass on a 1-year deal. Like, would the Predators maybe start looking at some pieces that they can move? It's not like they're going to trade like Philip Forsberg or UC Saros or anything like that.
Right.
But I think that's something to be watching the second half of the year is where are the Predators come trade talk time? And how active are they going to be? And, the other side is if they keep winning and they're in a good position, you look at the flexibility of this roster and they go, okay, let's maybe bring in one more person if the price is right.
Yeah.
Again, they're not going to trade a first round pick or anything, but hey, maybe we get some more help and just sort of see where this goes. Maybe that experience of playing in a first round of a playoff, even if it's a loss, maybe that's going to do good for somebody like Evangelista or Tomasino to get that experience.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think it's going to be really interesting to see what the Predators do, because they are well set up for next season's draft. Barry Trotz going to feel like that's enough to continue this reset the way he wants to see it. I also want to keep an eye on special teams. For me, this is a big storyline for me. The Nashville Predators have a really good top power play unit that just has not been able to convert. Are they going to hit their stride, or do they need to revamp what they're doing? So for me, it's that, and also the penalty kill. Again, I'm like, we have some really great penalty killers, but the penalty kill statistics are in the toilet. Are they going to be able to fix that, rebound, and come back with that? And I do think Tommy Novak back on the top power play unit. Let's see what that does. I think Tommy Novak, for me, he's a little bit a wild card. Like, he could change some things for this team, just back and healthy himself.
Yeah, consistency, I think, is going to be the key word to figuring out how well this team can improve on special teams. Nashville Predators taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning tonight at Bridgestone Arena. Again, in a Star Wars night, so bring your lightsabers.
And your Jedi powers.
Do whatever you can to help the Preds get a win here. I ran out of puns in the cold open. But we'll be back with a recap of that game tomorrow on the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day every single day. We will be back tomorrow with an all-new episode. We'll see you then.